All right, so I made it to the garage of Lee Hoover here in Marceline. Lee is responsible for taking the Autopia cars, the Midget Autopia cars, and restoring them and hopefully bringing them back to Marceline. Of course, as you know, the Midget Autopia cars are the only attraction to exist outside of any Disney theme park. So I'm here with Lee. Lee, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you very much for coming to Marceline, and you're interested in the Midget Autopia, right?
Absolutely. I'm excited to go inside this garage right here, this building is where the cars are being stored. Has anyone ever come here to film?
We've had the Disney 101 bloggers came through and took a look at them, but you're the second group to come.
I'm the second one. All right, I'm the second one. I'm not the first, but I am the second one to come here and film the Midget Autopia cars. But let's just pretend that I'm the first. Okay?
Sounds good.
This is an exclusive first time ever thing.
Never been seen before.
Never. All right, let's go check it out.
All right, let's check out these treasures. As you can see, the shop is rather full of lots of treasures, but the most special treasures, of course, are the Midget Autopia cars.
Wow, look at that.
This particular car was not originally the Browns color, but the car was loaned back to Disneyland. They wanted to have a car on display out at the regular Autopia ride. So the museum loaned them this car. They bronzed it, or painted it bronze, and for many, many years it was on a pylon out in the middle of the Autopia go-kart ride. Earlier last year, they returned the car to us, and we've been using it for display ever since. So we've got the bronze car that was at Disneyland. Then we've got these two bodies. We've got half of a chassis. For some reason, Disneyland had actually chopped up the original chassis for this car, so that's what the remnants in are there. So I had took one of the chassis off this to put here, and we use it for display when D23 was here this spring. Along with this, we have the original turnstiles that were part of the ride, and these also came from Disneyland. This was the exit turnstile from Disneyland, and this was the entry turnstile. So this one's predominantly sheet metal, and it's all rusted out. It's actually supposed to be welded on this platform right here, so I'm in the process of restoring it as well. Don't know if this is the original count or not, but it was approximately 42,000 guests have gone through this turnstile at some point or another.
And now, is that from Disneyland or from Marceline?
That's from Disney. Well, what I don't know is, was it reset when they refurbished the ride to send to Marceline, or I would guess that it was not reset, because 42,000 would be an awful lot for Marceline.
Right, that's true.
What I didn't realize actually until recently, talking with someone who actually ran the ride was in Marceline, is the ride was actually only open for 2 months a year. It was a part of the swimming pool complex out at the Disney park, and what would happen is if you wanted to ride the Midget Autopia ride, you went to the swimming pool, got your ticket, and then they sent somebody down to the ride to operate it for you. So if you're only operating, let's see, 2 months a year for 11 years, 42,000 is probably more than would have happened. So that probably includes what happened at Disneyland. Little interesting story. This is actually from a company called Perry Turnstiles, I believe. And after Kay Mallins, the director of the museum, drug it out of her barn about a month and a half ago and asked me to restore it, I contacted the company, and they were very excited to learn about the turnstile and sent me a bunch of engineering drawings for it. And in their company lore, Walt personally had contacted them about turnstiles for Disneyland. So they were very excited about hearing, that it was still there, and wanted to help us restore it by giving us drawings and things like that. Interesting, I guess the same company provided all the turnstiles at Disneyland, Disney World, and at least 2 of the overseas theme parks.
Wow. Most people know, most Disney fans know that Bob Gurr designed the Autopia cars at Disneyland, but he didn't design the Midget Autopia cars.
Aero Development was actually the company making this ride. It's one of the few rides that Bob did not do. He did a lot of the rides, most notably designed the Autopia cars. So, but in this case, this was by Aero Development. They were a company that made amusement park rides, and this was one of the rides that they offered. It's a interesting that we believe that there are somewhere between 4 and 10 rides just like this that existed at one time. This particular Midget Autopia ride, and of course it's the only one that was named Midget Autopia, ran for about 11 years, from I believe from 1955 till 1966. In 1966, the World's Fair rides were coming back, and one of the rides that was coming back was It's a Small World. It's a Small World had thousands of people a day going through it when it was at the World's Fair. Walt knew that it was going to be just as popular at Disneyland, so he wanted to make sure there was a good way to get all the people up to the ride and away from the ride after they'd enjoyed it. Unfortunately, the Midget Autopia ride was right where he was putting what he called the super sidewalk, so it had to go. We are very, very fortunate that Walt loved Marceline so much, and he loved the state of Missouri, and having been a child here, he knew that many of the children in rural Missouri were never going to have an opportunity to come to Disneyland and ride a Disney park ride. So rather than scrapping this ride, he and Roy had it refurbished, sent to Marceline, installed at one of our city parks in Marceline, and allowed all the children in the region to be able to come and ride this ride, get a taste of Disneyland that they'd probably never get another chance in their life. So it's very precious to us, and as far as anyone knows, this is the only ride that has ever left a Disney park intact as a ride to be used as a ride. After the ride had been used for 11 years in Marceline, actually 1 year longer than it ran at Disneyland, it was deemed no longer feasible to keep the ride in operation. There were maintenance issues, things like that. So for many years, the cars were stored in the city barn here in Marceline. And at that time, there were the 10 original cars. Unfortunately, at some time after many years of being in storage, someone decided they needed the space, and the cars were actually sent to the dump to be destroyed. Fortunately for us, many people learned that was going on, and apparently a lucky few went out to the dump and were able to recover these cars and save them. Now, since that time, they've really been dispersed around. We have the 2 full-up chassis plus 2 extra bodies and miscellaneous parts. There are 3 cars that I know have made their way back to California, actually, that had been sourced out of Kansas City. We're still searching for the other cars, trying to figure out where they might be. So ideally, we'd like to get back up to the full contingent of 10 cars. Not sure if that's going to happen or not. We may reproduce a couple if we need to. We're still trying to work out exactly how many cars that is necessary for it to be a functional ride. As you may or may not know, the children did not actually get to operate the car. Unlike the regular Autopia rides, which are gasoline powered, that the child or adult who's running the car controls the speed, the Midget Autopia ride, the speed was controlled by the operator. In this case, rather than being gasoline powered, they were electric powered. So there was a guide rail in the center of the track with power rails on either side of the guide rail. And after the children were put in the car and strapped in with a seat belt, the operator then controlled the movement of the car. There were horn buttons, however, so the kids could blow the horns as they went around the track. So I imagine it was a fairly noisy ride. The frames on these were built pretty much just like an automotive ride. You can see it's got formed steel rails, heavy gauge, probably about 11 gauge steel rails. They had a electric motor that mounts back here that drives a sprocket, and then up in the front of the nose of the car would be an electric transformer that took the track power and converted it to whatever power the electric motor needed to run the ride. The original Autopia rides, of course, were just regular go-karts, and people were crashing them left and right. Eventually they decided, well, we need to put a guide rail in to prevent that happening. Well, this had the guide rail all the time and electric power coming off of that rail. As we talked about, the Midget Autopia wasn't produced at Disneyland. We do have some Midget Autopia hardware that was produced at Disneyland. As we discussed, this car originally, or not originally, had been loaned by the museum to Disneyland, where it was on display inside the regular Autopia ride for many years. When it came back to us, we had a bit of a surprise. There have been some modifications done to it, and one of the modifications is the wheels and tires. This looks like a regular rubber wheel and tire, but is actually cast stone.
Wow.
You know, you can't tell it because I'm such a muscular, strong guy, but this thing is extremely heavy.
Wow. Oh.
So we do have some authentic Disneyland produced materials associated with the ride. Yeah, so in this case what we'd do is we'd provide a fiberglass shop one of these bodies so that they could actually make a mold off of it, just like they do for boats, so they could make a completely authentic shape using one of these and then make as many bodies as we wanted to off that mold as we wanted to.
Right.
And similarly, in the case of the chassis, we would probably take this chassis here, remove the body, make engineering drawings off of it so that a fabrication shop could make all the bits and pieces and then we could assemble them.
All right, so I want to thank Lee Hoover for inviting me to his garage here in Marceline, Missouri, where he is in the process of restoring the Midget Autopia vehicles that were originally in Disneyland, and they ran here in Marceline, as Lee said. They're trying to get this project off the ground again by raising money through a GoFundMe campaign. You can find information at the Walt Disney Hometown Museum website, waltdisneymuseum.org. But for now, I'm going to take off in my car and head back to the museum. Got to talk to Kay again, do some more Disney stuff around town, so I'll see you soon.
Hey Greg, where are you going with my car?
Oh, hey Lee, I traded you for my rental. I'll see you later. Thanks for showing me around.